Good morning.
Okay.
Hey, if you guys down at that far end want to kind of shuffle this way a little bit, we've got more room up this way, and kind of come on in closer so you all can see. And we will get started. Well, again, good morning. It's an honor to be here today to celebrate two very special people and their 61-year relationship with St. George's School. Welcome to all of you, as together we share in this newest chapter in the history of St. George's School. Please welcome our special guest, Caren McCutcheon Furbeyre, and her husband, Erle. I would like to remind you of this year's theme while we are here today, and you learn more about the McCutcheons and the vital role they have played in your school. I'm going to read a piece that was prepared for the newly started endowed chair, the Shaw and Nancy McCutcheon endowed chair, and this piece was written by John Carter in preparation for that. But it gives you a nice introduction to this lovely couple that we're here to honor today. Shaw and Nancy McCutcheon met and fell passionately in love while they were in college. He was studying mathematics at Harvard University, and she was at Wheaton College nearby. Ironically, they had grown up across the street from each other in Lake Forest, Illinois, a small suburb outside of Chicago. But their paths had never crossed in their early years. Shaw, being the avid golfer that he is, always said that Nancy grew up about a 9-iron away from him. Then World War II broke out. Shaw served as a meteorologist in the United States Army for 2 years in England. While very difficult for the families at home, the love between Shaw and Nancy seemed to flourish. They wrote letters to each other every day, and it might be accurate to say that Nancy never wrote another letter after that. After the war, Shaw finished his degree in mathematics at MIT and changed career directions and followed in his father's footsteps. John McCutcheon had been the renowned political cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune for over 40 years, and Shaw found that he too had a talent for communicating ideas through the medium of drawing. If you've ever been down to the MAC, there's a display of some of his most prominent political cartoons while he was working at the Spokesman Review. They moved to Spokane in the early 1950s and became pillars of the Spokane community, with Shaw working as the beloved political cartoonist for the Spokesman Review for 30 years. After moving to Spokane, Nancy began her own career as a successful landscape watercolorist. She was known throughout the Northwest. Shaw liked to say that initially people would ask Nancy if she was the wife of the political cartoonist Shaw McCutcheon. Later, people would ask Shaw if he was the husband of Nancy McCutcheon, the famous landscape painter. Her paintings are in many homes throughout Spokane. They enjoyed a long and happy life together, bearing 3 children, Shaw Jr., Lori, and Caren. Sadly, Lori passed away in a skiing accident in 1991. The Science Center in the Upper School is named in her memory. Although both were artists during their careers, Shaw's real talent was in the field of mathematics. He saw the world through numbers and would entertain at parties endlessly with tricks of number and memory games. Among many clever memory tricks, he could memorize a series of 100 numbers and recite them back. Being committed to education, they joined Fred Gilbert and several others in helping to found St. George's School. All of their kids attended St. George's, and their 2 grandchildren, Evan and Nathaniel, attended St. George's as well. And they have been devoted to supporting the school for over their lifetime, over the 61 years that the school's been in existence. Nancy passed away in 2009, and Shaw passed away this summer. Shaw and Nancy were part of the greatest generation. Have you ever heard that term, the greatest generation? They were the World War II vets. All the developments and achievements during the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, that's part of their legacy. Lifelong learners that they followed their passions, and they shared our values: honesty, respect, best efforts, and generosity of spirit. For 61 years, they were committed to St. George's. In the early days, They passing the hat at board meetings. They tell stories of each monthly board meeting, they'd have to pass the hat to make sure teachers were paid, and if they didn't have enough in the hat at that point, they'd pass it again. Sending their children here and then their grandchildren, and supporting the school in so many ways through the years. And then 4 years ago, Shaw, through a generous donation, started and established the Shaw and Nancy McCutcheon Endowed Chair for the Arts and Sciences. John Nord was the original endowed chair, and now it is David Holte. Shaw was a fascinating man. I got to know him over the last 7 years. Some interesting facts. So Shaw went to Albert Einstein's house and asked him a question when he was in college. That's one thing. I think that's fascinating. He traveled to UFO conventions, even into his 90s. He played golf with PGA pros and actually beat some of them over the 4 holes that he played. Fascinating stories at his memorial service. And he even played piano at retirement homes well into his 90s. He was not in a retirement home in his 90s, or ever. His father, the political cartoonist in Chicago, had a school named after him. Ironic. So now Shaw and Nancy McCutcheon also have a school named after them. Thank you. I'd like to have Caren and Erle unveil the stone, and then Caren will have some words.
Wow. Well, I am just kind of speechless. This is such a wonderful honor, and it's so great to be out at St. George's. My younger son graduated in 2014, so this is the 3rd fall that I have not been coming out here on a regular basis. And I see the school buses go by, and I just sort of, just get such a lump in my heart about what a wonderful place this is for my children. And as Jamie said, I went here several decades ago, and it's just great to be here. And thank you for such a lovely sort of remarks on Dad. Some of you may have remembered him. He was out here a bit. He would come out with and when they first got the smart boards, I think, Judson and John Nord would show Dad sort of how all this new technology worked in the sort of communicating math. And and there were just so many stories about Dad. He was going strong until, mid-June, and he got an infection, and it just sort of, as some of the doctors said, his biggest problem was that he was 94, and he just sort of it just kind of cascaded, and it was just 3.5 weeks from when he got sick to when he spent his last day here. So he just loved kids, he loved school, he loved being the center of attention, and he had all kinds of stories. And the funny that we were remembering some of them, and remembering the story about when he went to see Einstein, and he was a diver for Harvard, and they had gone up to Princeton, and he knew that Einstein was somewhere around Princeton, and found his address and knocked on the door and asked Einstein a question, and Einstein told him the answer. And somebody asked him, well, so what did he say? He says, well, I really can't remember. And then we said, well, what was the question? And I was like, I can't remember that either. So he was a remarkable man, and I am thoroughly humbled and honored to have been his daughter. And to have the school named after him and Mom is just such an honor. And so I think that's about all I have, I just thank you so much, and it's great to be here. It's such a beautiful day. And so with that, I will close. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we have one more little piece of this dedication that we want to take care of, but I also want to point out when you guys leave, we're going to give you each a card so you can be a part of this and remember the historical aspect. This is the only time the upper school will be named. You were here, and some of you, actually, I don't know if any of you, maybe the class, the graduating class, the seniors, were you guys here when they signed the gym girders, beams? Okay. So that's two things that you guys are now a part of. But you'll get one of these. Make sure as you're walking out, we'll have folks passing those out. But before we do that, we're going to have Erle and Caren cut the ribbon to rededicate the upper school. So we're going to be right over here. So if you want to take a look, if you guys will just stay seated, and then everybody else can watch. So let's go. We officially dedicate the upper school to Shaw and Nancy McCutcheon Upper School. Okay, with that, I want to thank you all again for being a part of this special day and honoring Shaw and Nancy McCutcheon. Remember it. Make sure you take your postcards. Oh, was it really?
I forgot to mention it was Dad's birthday today. So.
Did you guys hear that? So today would have been Shaw's 95th birthday. So appropriate. With that, you guys are dismissed, and thank you very much.